All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about a new solar technology that has enormous potential. I mean, it could be a real game changer. But there's a catch, one major flaw that's been holding it back. Well, what if I told you a new study has found a solution, and it's basically a crystal ball powered by AI to see into the future of this technology?
So that really gets to the heart of a huge challenge in renewable energy, right? When you've got this promising new tech, how do you know if it's actually built to last? I mean, the traditional way is you just have to wait and wait. But what if you could skip all that and just ask an AI?
Okay, so the technology at the very center of all this is something called a perovskite solar cell, or PSC for short. And you've got to understand, this stuff has been generating a ton of excitement in the scientific community. We're talking about some seriously incredible potential here. And here's exactly why there's so much buzz. Get this. In the lab, these PSCs have already hit a power conversion efficiency of over 26%. Now, to put that in perspective, that puts them right on par with the traditional silicon panels you see on rooftops everywhere. You know, the ones that have had decades and decades of development to get to that point. It's a huge deal.
Okay, so if they're just as efficient and they can be made from cheaper materials, you're probably asking, what's the holdup? Why aren't these everywhere? Well, it all comes down to one big, crucial question: longevity. See, we know silicon panels can last for 20 years, sometimes even longer, but for perovskites, we just don't know yet. And that single uncertainty, it's a massive roadblock.
And this brings us right to the central conflict of our story, the billion-dollar bottleneck that is slowing this whole field down. And that problem is the incredibly mind-numbingly time-consuming process of trying to predict their performance and test for long-term stability.
You know, the old-school way of doing this is painfully simple and painfully slow. Researchers would cook up a new cell in the lab, they'd take it outside, and then they would just wait. Seriously, they have to monitor its performance through all the changing seasons, through rain, sun, heat, cold, for months, sometimes even years, just to see how it holds up.
So what you end up with is this year-long feedback loop for every single new material you want to try. It's just an enormous traffic jam for innovation, right when we need clean energy research to be in the express lane.
So, the big question is, how do you break through that traffic jam? Well, this is where it gets really cool. A team of researchers from institutions across Germany, Spain, and Israel came up with an absolutely brilliant shortcut. And the key? Machine learning.
Now, at its core, machine learning is really all about training a computer program to recognize patterns in data. So the big idea here was to train an AI to act like a translator. They wanted it to be able to look at the language of short, intense lab tests and translate that into the language of long-term, real-world outdoor performance.
So here's a look at how their AI prediction pipeline actually works. First, they basically blast the solar cells with light and heat in a super-controlled lab setting. This simulates aging, but on a way faster timescale. Then, they feed all of that performance data into the machine learning model. The model just chews on all that data, and it starts to learn the unique ways that specific cell degrades under stress. And then, this is the magic part, it spits out a prediction of how that exact same cell would perform over months and months out in the real world.
Okay, so that all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But the billion-dollar question is still hanging out there. Does it actually work? Well, this is where the research gets incredibly exciting, because it's time to put this AI to the ultimate test.
So to really test their AI, the researchers needed real-world data, what scientists call the ground truth, and they had it. They had carefully tracked the actual performance of a perovskite solar cell that was sitting on a rooftop in Barcelona for months. So the test was simple. Could the AI's prediction, based only on lab data, match this real-world performance curve?
And the answer? It was an absolutely resounding yes. I mean, this quote from the paper really says it all. The AI's prediction, remember, based only on those quick indoor lab tests, created a performance curve that almost perfectly matched the real-world data. It was incredible. They had actually built a working crystal ball. But they didn't stop there. They decided to push it even further. They took the model that was trained on data from Barcelona's Mediterranean climate and asked it to predict performance in a completely different environment, the harsh desert of Sde Boker in Israel. And even with totally different weather, different heat, different solar conditions, the AI's prediction was still remarkably accurate. This proved the model wasn't a one-trick pony. It was robust and could be used almost anywhere.
So why does this all matter so much? I mean, what's the big takeaway here?
Well, it's because this isn't just some neat academic exercise. A tool like this fundamentally changes the game. It completely breaks open that bottleneck that has been holding perovskite solar technology back for years.
I mean, the difference here is just staggering. The paper puts it plainly, saying that the stability of new solar cells can now be evaluated in a matter of days instead of months. Think about that. A process that used to take a year, sometimes even more, can now be done in a tiny fraction of the time. This just puts the whole research and development cycle into hyperdrive.
And that incredible speed, it just unlocks everything. It means researchers can now rapidly test thousands of new material combinations to find the most stable ones. It means they can use the AI to figure out why the cells are failing, to pinpoint exactly which stress factors like light or heat or humidity are the biggest culprits. And all of this just dramatically accelerates the journey from a cool idea in a lab to a commercially viable, cheap, and durable solar cell that we can all use.
So this really just leaves us with the final thought. For years, developing these amazing solar cells was kind of like trying to navigate a giant maze in the dark. But now, with this AI, it's like researchers have been handed a map and a powerful flashlight. So the question is no longer if we can perfect the next generation of solar power. The real question is, how fast can we get there?